Good evening, James Riddle here in Wake Forest, North Carolina, with a few words on a recent decision from the Supreme Court. A lot of things have been going on lately in the culture war, especially Christians are concerned. Conservatives in general, libertarians are concerned. But in the past few weeks, I guess three big issues have come up. One is the flying of the Confederate flag, and that's tied in, of course, with the horrible shootings in South Carolina. Then there were the two decisions that were passed down by SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, 2 days in a row, back to back. The one declaring Obamacare legal, and the other one declaring that all states in the Union should afford the same marriage opportunities to homosexual couples as they do to heterosexual couples. And just a few words, especially on that decision in regards to homosexual marriage. First of all, states really don't need to be involved in marriage laws. There's a lot of things a state gets involved in they don't really belong in. If they're going to be involved in marriage, which really they shouldn't be, obviously they can't redefine the word. But let's just consider a few things about some of these cases that have come up in recent years. Often what happens is the Supreme Court will rely upon the 14th Amendment, and that seems to be a big problem. First of all, let's just talk about the 14th Amendment, okay? They'll say that due process means that the states should be, applying the laws equally and fairly to everybody. And the 14th Amendment, which I could go into detail on, was probably, besides maybe the 17th Amendment and the 16th, probably the worst amendment ever added to our Constitution. But let's just look at the 14th Amendment. Number one, it's a patently illegal amendment. I'm not just saying that, okay? There were a lot of shenanigans that went on during the Reconstruction era, in that era of 1868. The Northern Radical Republicans wanted the 14th Amendment to be ratified. They really were desperate to have it ratified. The 14th Amendment did a few things. I mean, it basically excused all of the federal debt and ignored all the Confederate debt. So basically it said, hey, look, if anything the Confederate government is owed, well, they're not going to get it. And anything we owe, well, hey, you're going to pay it, not question it. It says it can't be questioned in that amendment. That's one thing that the amendment did. But anyway, let's just consider the illegality of the amendment. The amendment was never legally ratified. First of all, it's kind of difficult to tell states that wanted to leave the Union peacefully, hey, by the way, I know you guys want out, but to get back in, which you better get back in, you're going to have to sign off on this amendment. So let's not even consider that. Let's just say that the South ratified the amendment. New Jersey and Oregon rescinded their calls, or in other words, they rescinded their ratifications because of everything that went on. There were a lot of loony things going on during that era to get that 14th Amendment passed. It was not legally ratified, it was illegally enacted. Okay, I'm a kook, I believe these things. Well, read Forrest McDonald, States' Rights in the Union, put out by Kansas U Press. Forrest McDonald talks about some of the shenanigans that went on. Forrest McDonald is certainly not a quack. Larry McDonald, former congressman from the state of Georgia, who died in a plane crash in 1983 under very questionable causes. A Democratic congressman from the state of Georgia definitely believes the 14th Amendment was illegally enacted and has a chapter in his book, We Hold These Truths. He has a chapter in this book called The Illegal 14th. Clarence Carson, professor for many years, American Textbook Committee, a small textbook publisher out of Alabama, put this book out, Basic American Government. He also has about a 6-volume history. He will tell you about the shenanigans that went on to get the 14th Amendment through. Luigi Marco Bassani, Liberty, State, and Union, the Political Theory of Thomas Jefferson, basically indicates that from the Lincoln era on, the Constitution was turned on its head. The 14th Amendment was part of that radical plan to turn our country from a republic really more into a democratic mess. John Dwyer, great book, The War Between the States, America's Uncivil War. He talks about these things. So what I'm getting at is these aren't quacks that are saying this. And I could go into a lot of detail, but I don't really feel like doing it right now. The 14th Amendment was illegally enacted. And also the incorporation clause of the 14th Amendment has been a real big mess, and that's what's caused a lot of our troubles. even if you accept the 14th Amendment was clearly there to make sure that blacks received equal treatment in the South, okay, and in all the states, which I think we can all agree that citizens should be treated equally. However, is the incorporation doctrine applied properly today? Well, the late Raoul Berger didn't think so. The 14th Amendment and the Bill of Rights, again, not a quack, University of Oklahoma Press. This guy was a professor for years. So there's a lot of bad legal theory going on out there. The problem today with Christians with these decisions on homosexuality is it's in their face now. But the 50 some odd million babies that have been murdered because of Roe versus Wade, that's been in their face, but they've ignored it. For years and years, for 42 years now, Christians have went down to the polls and voted for people that supported Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton. They didn't care. Every state law in the Union overturned on first trimester abortions. And with Doe versus Bolton, if you've got a person that says they are mentally ill or they'll have problems having the child mentally or physically, they can kill the baby. Every state has to change their law. The problem with the Supreme Court doing that is, number one, the Supreme Court does not make law. They cannot make law. Number two, Congress can't even make that law because the Constitution is enumerated. All powers herein granted. So Congress can't pass laws on guns, they can't, education, millions of things they pass laws on. They can't do it. It's illegal. They cannot do it. So that's a problem. But there's an answer. There's an answer to all this that has not been considered. All these conservatives out there are saying, okay, look, we think we know how to overturn Roe versus Wade, get the right person elected, or overturn these different things. You don't have to overturn anything. It's a Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court is not the final arbiter in law of the land. And also, on another note, isn't it interesting that the states created the federal government as their servant, but the federal government has the final say? Isn't that weird? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Here's the answer. Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution. Congress can limit the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Now think about it. For years, under George Bush II, for several years, pro-life Republicans supposedly had control of the House and the Senate. All they had to do was 218 to 217 in the Congress or in the House and 5149 in the Senate. Issue a statement. The Supreme Court shall not hear cases on abortion. All cases they have heard are null and void. Wow, wouldn't that be something else? They could do it with the homosexual marriage issue, okay? Now it's kind of difficult for them to do it with Obamacare since they're the fools that passed that. But the thing is, there is the actual key. Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution. So I say to my Christians, pray for this country. Let people know about Jesus. He's the only answer. We have all sinned and we've fallen short of the glory of God. We must admit we are sinners and trust in Christ alone for our salvation. But pray for our country and pray that good people will stand up and they will declare that this kind of stuff needs to end. But however the government goes, and I really see a trajectory toward complete control of the churches and everything else, however it goes, trust Christ, bring others into the fold. Jesus shed his blood for the church, and we need to be salt and light. God bless.